Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and I'm excited to be here on launch day for Halo 5 Guardians, bringing you guys my impressions of the campaign. Now, let's set the parameters. Just want to make sure you guys are well aware of how I personally experienced the campaign this time around. I was able to play it two-player co-op. My brother and I played it just like we've been doing since the days of Halo 1, and we played it on Legendary. That's the only difficulty mode. Nothing else matters, Legendary or bust. And we managed to finish it this morning. It took us about 9 hours. It was difficult. It was challenging. Let's just put it that way. I think they did a very good job with harnessing and crafting Legendary difficulty. It's supposed to be a badge of honor completing the game on Legendary. Everyone's always known that, especially you crazy people out there who are going to try and solo this damn game. It's going to be a challenge, and you will find out if you are worthy or not, for sure. I imagine that soloing this on Legendary could take you anywhere from like 11 to 14 hours. Like, seriously, some of the fights were just that damn hard, and if it wasn't for the fact that I was playing with my brother, you know, someone who I can just really communicate very well with, often without speaking, you know, the game probably would have been much more difficult than it was, and it already was challenging. There were quite a few fights that were seriously, like, just brutal. They required a lot of coordination between us. They required a lot of knowledge of what weapons work best against what enemy types. And I think that's another big part of how they crafted Legendary, was that, you know, things like the Prometheans, returning enemies from Halo 4, they've been, you know, sort of redefined. They seriously kick butt now. The Knights that we remember in Halo 4 is a relatively simple, you know, enemy to defeat, are just on a whole nother level now. We've got new shields for the different enemies. You know, what they've really done, what they've managed to capture, is the Spartans finally feel like Spartans. The same Spartans that some of us read about in the books, that we heard about in the stories and the lore. They feel properly badass. But at the same time, they are facing a rather formidable foe. Whether it be the Covenant or the Prometheans, these are enemies that are here to destroy their way of life, that, you know, to annihilate the human race, and they mean business. They do not mess around. When you run into a hunter, it seriously screws you up. When you run into a, you know, a freaking suicidal pack of grunts, they're out for business. You know, they're chaotic, they are psychopaths, and they will try and kill you. Jackals do not mess around. They're some of the best snipers in the galaxy, and they prove that. That was a really great feeling to see that, you know, very well captured. I think Reach did a good job of that on Legendary, and I think Halo 5 has followed in the footsteps of that game's difficulty, and just done a really good job of making sure that the enemies feel like proper enemies. I mean, these are, you know, the Covenant is a race that practically annihilated humanity. You know, they need to be treated that way when the player engages them in combat. They've done a good job with that. So Legendary mode has my thumbs up as a proper Legendary difficulty for Halo. It felt really great. The overall length of the game, like I said, around 9 hours I think it took us. It just felt, you know, it felt good when we were all said and done. I didn't feel like the game dragged on, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Guardians has some really great pacing. There's a nice variety of, you know, different combat situations. We've got, you know, the driving segments that have always made Halo so popular have returned. They did a really, really good job on that. You get to, you know, get back into some of your favorite Halo vehicles and in different situations. It just all came together very well when we were all said and done with the campaign. And I wasn't disappointed, that's for sure. You know, I'm not going to ruin any of the story. I don't want this to be spoilers at all. Really, we're just going to talk about, you know, my thoughts on it here. But when everything was said and done and when the credits rolled, I was like, yes, Halo is back. Can't wait to see what's next for the story. I know that may seem crazy to be like, I can't wait for the next Halo. Not saying that I'm bored with, you know, the gameplay of this one already, but that I want to see where the story goes next. I do believe, you know, we're looking at one more Halo from 343 at least, you know, to finish this part of the trilogy. Who knows what's going to happen beyond that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the finer elements of, you know, how we experience the campaign. I think the biggest thing that I did want to talk a little bit about is the AI, because if you play the game alone or with 2 people or with 3 people, you're going to have any number of AI, because there are always 4 Spartans in the game at all times, not just in the cutscenes, but actively engaging in combat. So in our case, it was myself and my brother. You know, one of us either playing as Locke or Chief for the leader role, and then the other player is able to pick any one of the other 3 Spartans during any course of the mission when you swap back and forth between the 2. The other 2 Spartans that are left will be AI controlled. As the leader, as Chief or Locke, you have the ability to control them just a little bit. You can tell them to attack certain enemies, you can tell them to move to certain areas, and you can tell them to come revive you when you fall down. The issue I have with this is when you die, command does not get transferred to the other human players, meaning that they have no control over the AI, and frankly, the AI for the AI is really damn bad. I mean, it's some of the worst AI I've ever seen in a Halo game. Like, the Marines back in Halo 1 were more functional at times than, you know, your Spartan AI teammates are going to be. They're seriously just that bad sometimes. It's not like that all of the time, but when this, you know, when the S starts to hit the F, and when you're in some of the larger scale combat situations, like, they require constant babysitting to be functional. And a part of me says, you know, that it'd be better off if they weren't there. But, you know, you can kind of look at that also like, you know, it doesn't really matter that if they were there or not. Either way, I guess, you know, you still got that 2-player legendary difficulty because of their incapabilities. It just felt like they were kind of shoot in last second, that they wanted to have all 4 of the Spartans who are in the story, you know, also inside of the combat. They didn't want to do what Reach did. And I don't think it went over as well as they had hoped it would have done. Was it really frustrating? It did it detract from my enjoyment in the game? Only in very, you know, certain situations did I really start to become disappointed and upset with them. A lot of it was when I would be down, my brother would be down, and the AI seemed to have some sort of an inability to res us. They were looking at the stars. They were attacking enemies they didn't need to be attacking. So all I can say is if you do play it 2 players, especially on a higher difficulty, legendary, even heroic maybe, don't depend on the AI. Just pretend they're there to kind of help, maybe once in a while absorb some bullets for you. And we'll just leave it at that because it, like I said, it didn't really screw up with my experience outside of that. Now I want to talk a little bit about audio and environment design because these are things that are important to me. And I think that Halo 5 possibly has some of the best locations, the best environments in a Halo game ever. Like, not just because this is Halo 5 Guardians, this is 2015, the engine is staggering. There's no denying that. This is a seriously beautiful engine, 60 FPS, sadly at the cost of that split screen, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what we got were some insane skyboxes, simply stunning and gorgeous locations. I mean, this game looks fantastic. But outside of the visual quality of it, there was just really well-designed, you know, pieces to the campaign. The set pieces all felt great. The driving sequences were also so well done. You know, this instance where we're in the Mantis was just, it's just really well done. You know, the combat segments felt fun because the level design was so well handled. And I think that's very clear. Audio-wise, Guardians is easily the best sounding Halo game in the franchise. They've done a lot of tweaks to some of the old weapons. You know, we have new variants of old weapons. The game just sounds fantastic. It really does, you know, from that classic humming sort of, you know, sticky sound of a sticky grenade to the needler to the BR, you know, everything's been redone and it all fits into the game so well. So my overall thoughts on the entire campaign experience, it was great. It's up there for me with one of my favorite Halo campaigns, and I imagine as time goes by and I really get to let everything soak in, I'm gonna love it even more because there were so many memorable missions in the game that I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm actually looking forward already to going back and replaying the campaign again. I'd like to actually do it with 4 players. I feel like that'd be even more enjoyable. So let's talk about the idea of split screen, right? I do want to briefly address this. It's a sad thing, right? We knew about it a while ago. There's not much that can be said. I do find it thoroughly disappointing that there will be people out there who will not be able to play the Halo campaign as they have for the last 10 years, you know, on a couch with their friends in split screen. And the same thing goes for the multiplayer. You know, they say it was a sacrifice for 60 FPS, and when you look at the visual quality of the game, you can possibly see that. But I don't think, you know, some sort of scaling system that knocked it down to 30 just so people could play it split screen would have been too much to ask. Split screen is just, it's Halo. It's what has made Halo special. It's how people were able to do 8-player LAN parties in their basement with only 2 Xboxes for, you know, for the last 10 years, as I said. I mean, it takes a little bit away from what has made Halo so special, you know, as a game and as an experience, as a first-person shooter experience. So a little disappointing there, but, you know, I don't think it should let anybody, I don't think that should bring anyone down from purchasing the game because there's just a lot of awesomeness here, and you're only doing yourself a disservice if you decide to blow off Guardians because of what happened with the split screen thing. Does it suck? Yeah, it does. If you have an Xbox One and you have a friend who has an Xbox One or a brother, look up game sharing, and there you go. You can get 1 copy of Halo and you guys can both play it without having to purchase 2 copies. Just Google Xbox One game share, how to do that if you're looking to do it with a friend or something like that. Understandably, not everyone has 2 Xboxes, but that's all I can recommend. Whew. So a lot, right? A lot there. You know, some of the other small standout things that I did want to talk about really had to do with the weapons. You know, the weapons and the shooting, the core mechanics of the game of Halo. You know, this is the first time we're seeing the Spartans have innate abilities. Reach first Reach and 3, you know, kind of tapped into the idea of Spartan abilities. We had the deployable bubble shields and health regens in 3. Then Reach came along and actually gave us armor abilities. Then 4 was like, you know, let's continue that. 5 has kind of looked at it and said, you know, we're going about it the wrong way. You know, how do we make Spartans Spartans? Well, Spartans should, you know, innately have these abilities. Their armor should just be able to allow them to do this. They don't have a choice. They can always sprint. They can ground pound. They can shoulder charge. You know, they're powerful. They're fast. They're agile. They are very much like, you know, bipedal jet fighters. They've done a very good job of that. You know, we have the refined shooting mechanics. It's very much a system that feels more like Halo 2, which is a good thing, because I think Halo 2, honestly, is one of the best first-person shooters ever because of those shooting mechanics. And, you know, Guardians has followed in line with that and has done the same thing for their campaign as well as the multiplayer. But when we actually talk about the weapons in the game, even in the campaign, the diversity of weapons that now exist in Halo is insane. You know, because we have Covenant tech, we've got the human tech, the UNSC stuff, and then we've got Forerunner tech now. You know, all the stuff that was in 4 has been brought back. It's all been refined. It was just insane to see that there could be so many weapons in a campaign experience, and they all could have their own usage and effectiveness in different scenarios. I feel like that's a huge accomplishment, to have like 4 different types of single fire weapons that all work really well. You know, you've got the light rifle, you've got the Covenant carbine, and you've got the, you know, the DMR and then the BR, all kind of in that same sort of category, and they all work in their own situations, and they're all fun to use. You're also going to see weapon variants within the campaign. So there's like special versions of the sniper. For example, Linda's sniper. There's special versions of the saw that you can pick up that are kind of hidden in the level. And I think that's the last thing I want to talk about is the overall design of the environments. You know, I said they were really enjoyable as combat sandboxes, but what about, you know, giving the player a little bit of exploration room? There's lots of hidden areas. There are data pads to be found that tell little stories, including insane grunts telling stories in their data pads, which is just probably the most hilarious thing ever. A lot of the humor when it comes to the grunts has definitely remained intact in Guardians, and I appreciate that very, very much. It was a lot of fun to hear some of those ridiculous moments, as you will see. So that element of, you know, scavenging and finding hidden little goodies in Halo is definitely, it's still there. And the cool thing is a lot of the data pads that you find, which are not only collectibles, are also near like weapon caches. So that's how you get your hands on some of those weapons like the saw or the, you know, the different sniper rifle variants that you can find throughout the world. And I know that we didn't even touch on that in our time with the campaign. You know, we explored a little bit just for the sake of finding flanks in combat. But there's a lot more to find. There are walls to be broken down with your Spartan shoulder charge. There's a lot of good stuff that you can dig for inside of the campaign, not to mention the skulls, which I haven't even begun to look for. So that part of Halo has been preserved with Guardians, and I think it's been very well executed. So that really does it, guys. There's a lot to talk about in terms of the multiplayer, but I want to spend more time with it. My time in the beta doesn't really justify what the final game is like, so I can't use my opinions there. I'm going to play some Arena. I want to play Warzone. I want to see how these rec packs work in Warzone and give you my overall thoughts on the multiplayer at a different point in time. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in the campaign, right, this is a little bit disappointing. Upon completing it this morning with my brother, we discovered that we were not rewarded anything for completing the campaign on Legendary. In the past, you know, since they actually allowed you to customize your Spartan, completing the game on Legendary would give the player like a unique visor, you know, Master Chief's gold visor, or a unique piece of armor, or a unique emblem. None of that was rewarded upon the completion of Guardians campaign, and that's a bit upsetting. I think that sense of, you know, triumph over Legendary difficulty and, you know, wearing those badges of honor, those gold shields, and, you know, the different emblems is a very important part of why people like to carry the progress from the campaign, you know, over to into the multiplayer in a cosmetic sense, and it's not there. And I know it's a small detail, but I actually did find it thoroughly disappointing, as did my brother, and I imagine many of you will agree on that. So just a small tidbit that closed it out there. Overall, if you are a Halo fan, you like Halo campaigns, this is one to pick up. There's no reason to avoid that. And I would say that if you're a newcomer to the franchise, maybe you got your hands on the Master Chief Collection, you played through the campaign, grab 5. You're going to enjoy it, you're going to have a lot of fun, and I promise you that the multiplayer is not going to disappoint either. There's a lot of great stuff here. This is a huge game with an insanely high amount of content and replayability. If you guys have any questions for me regarding my thoughts on the campaign, if you'd like to share some of your own, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I'll catch up with you guys later this week regarding my multiplayer impressions, and I will see you in the next one.